In moments of vulnerability between couples, there is usually one question that has to be answered. Can you love me in this place? When we expose ourselves, our deepest longing, our most hidden relational needs, then we are opening ourselves to the most basic question two people can ask of each other. Can you love me in this place? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode, revealing our wounds and traumas and asking if we can be loved in the hurt places. Let's get started.
Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast that provides support and guidance to help heal the wounds of attachment trauma. Whether you find yourself struggling with unresolved issues in the past or have experienced trauma in your current relationship, our goal is to provide accurate, scientifically informed information, as well as the tools to help you create a secure connection between you and your partner. And here's your host, Tom Philp.
Trauma creates internal scars. They aren't visible on the outside, which is unfair to the rest of the world. It'd be a lot easier if we could wear a sign that said trauma within. Then maybe people would understand, be kinder, more gentle. But instead, we carry these scars around with us, and no one is the wiser. They don't know the internal struggles, the moments of emotional hijacking when we get triggered, the energy it takes to manage every moment at times, the self-talk it takes to stay off the ledge, the layers of protection that hide these wounds and traumas. They only see what's on the outside, the smiles, the laughter, sometimes the sad days, and the going on with life. Part of my work with couples is to help them reveal their wounds, to uncover the deep layers of protection and expose those places that keep them stuck in the same patterns, the same negative patterns in their relationships. This is deeply personal work because it involves the view of the self. What usually happens when couples learn to de-escalate their cycles, when they learn to recognize and understand those automatic defensive responses that keep them locked in the same negative patterns, then they dive deeper and they start to become more evolved in their view of self, meaning that each partner carries with them their view of themselves as it relates to their past trauma. This view of self is usually wrapped in shame and humiliation and often can carry the message, if I expose this part of myself, I will never be loved in this place. I will suffer the same treatment as before. I will be rejected, ignored, abandoned, ridiculed. It's the fear of being re-traumatized. Let me give you an example. I was working with a couple a while back, and the husband was struggling to respond to his partner when she was sharing some old hurts that occurred in their relationship. These hurts were still fresh for her, and she desperately wanted him to be able to know and understand the ways that she felt hurt in the relationship. In this particular case, she needed him to know and understand this because she had moved out, and she didn't want to move back until she felt like that pattern was broken. She was scared that they might fall right back into the same patterns, go right back on with life as normal, and they won't have actually changed anything, and she would be hurt over again. Now, he really cared about his wife, and he wanted to be able to give her what she needed to help. But this is where he got stuck. He didn't know what to do. He felt at a loss to be able to provide her a good enough response to help her heal from the wounds that he had caused. As such, he would become defensive in the interactions, which he knew was not helpful as well. And he felt oftentimes beat up or punished that she would continue to bring up those hurtful moments in the past in their relationship. And precisely because what he was doing was not working, that he felt that way. And it wasn't the words that he lacked. He was able to say, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't hurt you, I wish I could take it back. What was lacking in those moments was not the current words, but the lack of feeling in which they were spoke. He wasn't sending the message that he really was able to feel her pain and her suffering and her hurt so that she felt like he really got it deep, deep down. Well, as we began to peel back some of the layers of what was happening to him, we began to realize that a part of himself was getting triggered in those moments and in those conversations. A part that was buried very deep and hidden beneath layers of protection. This part of himself had created meaning out of his own past traumas, where he would attack himself. He would label himself as a bad person, and in fact, he would heap all kinds of shame and ridicule on himself. This was a part of himself that he never showed to anyone. It was only known to himself. And no one could see how he was hurting himself in those moments, only that he lacked the necessary emotion to respond in a way that would help his partner heal when she was bringing her fears, her hurt, and her concern to him. Now, as we were able to tap into his ability to get in touch with these feelings he felt towards himself, he was able to finally speak about this internal dialogue at times and how he was critical and demeaning and almost hated himself in moments where he felt like he had disappointed his partner or let her down. When we were able to get him to stay longer with those feelings, those wounds, and those hurts, then he was able to actually communicate to her what was going on inside himself to his partner. Now, she, of course, responded with incredible empathy and compassion. She even cried hearing how hard he was on himself. She responded that it hurt her to know that he was doing this to himself in certain moments. And in doing so, we began to realize that what was missing for him in those moments when his partner wanted to talk about her own hurts in the relationship and why he felt like nothing he did was able to help her, that his own trauma, unseen by everybody else, was getting in the way of him being able to communicate emotionally to his partner and communicate effectively, emotionally, how truly sorry he was. This moment, of course, was very healing for her as she began to understand and receive what was missing for her in order for her to heal as well. Essentially, she was able to respond to his trauma because she felt that her trauma was finally being responded to herself. And they were both able to expose a part of themselves and answer that crucial question of, yes, my partner can love me in this place. This is something I see often where one person's trauma can trigger the other person's trauma, and so they never often get what they really need in order to heal and feel like their partner is understanding where they're coming from. And so in my work with couples, sometimes it's very difficult to get people to stop, slow down, and reflect enough to turn their thoughts inward. It's only natural that we want to move away from the pain and the suffering that we've experienced. It's only natural that we build up layers of protection over some of our deepest hurts, our most insecure parts, our most painful parts. But being able to expose that to somebody that you love and care about, somebody that you are attached to, creates an opportunity to be loved in places where deep down we really question whether we can ever be loved. When traumas are created out of our families of origin, the original families in which we grow up in, times where we are rejected, abandoned, ridiculed, left alone, not just from the events, but from anybody coming alongside us to help us understand a traumatic event. Those ruptures that go on day after day, year after year, that are never repaired with our parents, those create deep meanings about ourself, and we carry those meanings into our adult relationships. Our relationships with our friends, our relationships with our colleagues, and certainly our relationships with our loved ones. And so being able to go through a process where we can expose those deep hurts and we can expose ourselves to an opportunity to be loved in a place where we don't feel like we could ever be loved can create some of the most deep healing I've ever seen. It can change somebody's life. It can be life-altering. And it can do so because it can teach our bodies and our central nervous systems not to be so afraid, not to bury these hurts beneath layers and layers of protection, not to turn on ourselves. And essentially, it can create a message that our body can receive that says, maybe I'm not so bad after all. Maybe what I suffered through wasn't my fault. Maybe I can actually get a different response, something I've been longing for so long from somebody that means so much to me and is so important to me. And when we give ourselves an opportunity to be loved in those places that we don't think we can ever be loved in, that can create a kind of freedom from a painful burden that we've been carrying for years. And in that sense, it can be life-altering. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. This is something I've just been thinking about for some time, and I've been trying to figure out how to articulate what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing with so many of my brave couples that come to me. I hope you have found this helpful, and I hope on some level it's helped you to be able to reflect, what are those feelings you have towards yourself deep, deep down where you feel like you could never be loved in that place? And what would it take for you to be able to expose that part of yourself in the right environment, with the right person, in the right context, in order to maybe challenge those beliefs you have about yourself that you could never be loved in that place? And I want to emphasize again, I only want you to be able to do that if you feel safe enough to do that with the right person in the right place at the right time. Never try to expose yourself in an unsafe situation. That would only re-traumatize you again. So I hope you've found some things that you can explore a little bit about yourself and your relationships. As always, I really appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.